Welcome back to another edition of Rock Forever. We got a very special guest. He's taken some of your favorite album covers, so many incredible shots of your favorite artists. It had to end up in a big coffee table book, The Decade That Rocked. Please welcome the man himself, Mark Weiss.
Hey, how you doing, Jay? Thanks for having me.
Doing great, Mark. I know everybody's loving the book, man. Tell us, I know you must have fell in love with music before photography. So tell us about like your first memories of being enraptured by music and really wanting to photograph it.
Well, my brother had a garage band. He used to play Steppenwolf and Iron Butterfly, and so I used to go across the street and watch him play. So that was always cool. He always had hot girls sitting around. So that was a nice environment for like a 12-year-old. And then he took me to some concerts, Eric Clapton and who else? Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. So he started taking me to concerts. I tagged along with him and his friends, and it was just a fun experience. And he kind of opened my eyes to it all, and I wanted to be part of it.
Yeah, well, I know I've read your story about, cutting grass and earning that first Canon camera and really turning loose by the 8th grade. Were there photographers you looked up to as mentors, or was it just basically the idea of a photograph?
Well, when I first got my camera, when like you said, I mowed lawns, and a guy gave me this camera for mowing the lawn for a season. I just started taking pictures of my dog and my brother, who used to ride motorcycles too. And that's really all I did. But then when he started taking me to concerts, I started bringing the camera, and that's how I kind of got involved in that. But it was just something fun to do, and got me a little attention, and that just kind of snowballed it. As far as there was a magazine called Rock Scene back in the day, Rock Scene magazine in the 70s, and Bob Gruen and Lynn Goldsmith and Mick Rock, all these photographers, who mostly Bob Gruen actually was in there, and he always had some really cool photos of Kiss or the New York Dolls or Blondie. And he always got like behind the scenes stuff, so I was like, that would be really cool to like hang out with everyone and just take pictures. And just it's really, I learned that it's really the access is really important, and then you got to hone your craft and your skills. And I took from a lot of the photographers from the 70s and grabbed a little bit from each one and kind of did them all instead of just one kind of focus. I did album covers, I did backstage, I did at home photo shoots, just a little bit of everything. So I'm kind of a mixture of the photographs that I've seen in rock scene pretty much.
Yeah, for those of us that were younger, this is pre-internet, this is pre-MTV. Those magazines, Rock Scene, Circus, Cream, Hit Parader. I mean, these were really the only access you had. The rock on television was very small. You might see a little performance on the Tonight Show or American Bandstand. Of course, they're lip syncing, but those magazines really the window to the world before MTV exploded. Talk about your first break. Was it Circus Magazine, or what magazine was it that gave you the opportunity to start submitting?
Yeah, it was Circus. I was selling pictures for $1 a piece outside the concerts, and Kiss was playing for like 3 nights at Madison Square Garden, and I went the first night, stayed up all night. This is what I used to do. I used to like stay up and then sell them the next night, and sell them in my high school out of my locker, and then I'd go to the concert the next day. And I got arrested for selling my pictures like I was a bootlegger. So I went in a little paddy wagon with all the shirt sellers, and after getting caught by the cops. And then the next day I just went home. I was kind of bumming out, but then I was reading through my Circus subscription, Circus magazine, and I was like just curious where they were located, and they were located in New York City. And so I just went to that address with I didn't really have a portfolio. I just had a bunch of slides and some black and white prints. So I went up there and I just knocked on the door, and the secretary took a liking to me and said, good timing today. They're almost off deadline. Why don't you hang out and I'll introduce you to the art director? So that's what I did. I hung out for a few hours and saw him. And then Jerry Rothberg, the owner, publisher, founder of the magazine, came in and took a liking to me, and gave me some advice. And I came back maybe 5 months later with some Aerosmith photos that they needed, that because Aerosmith wasn't letting a lot of photographers shoot them, and I stuck my camera in, and I had some really good shots over from Giant Stadium, 1978. And then that picture ended up being a centerfold in Circus, and then it just snowballed from there.
Wow. So you pretty much, bum rushed the joint and just said, look, I got photos. And this is before you had press or photo passes or access. You're just shooting, with your lens through the crowd. What
Yeah.
was the turning point where they started putting you on assignments and you're in the, photo pit and all that?
Yeah. Well, then they started submitting like every issue from there. They wanted to stay Ted Nugent and Journey, and I had these photos, so they started just submitting, putting them in the magazine, uh, and then I asked them if I could use their name to get into some concerts, and they said yeah. And then they started hiring me for like $125, but they owned everything. So I didn't care. I just wanted my pictures in the magazine. They own the pictures, so they'll use more photos anyway, and it gives me more of a name, and it was a win-win. So I did that for several years. Van Halen was a big break in 70. The following summer, 79, they played Convention Hall in Asbury Park. Had and I had access. I went upstairs backstage, and I met the guys. It's my first picture of Eddie, which is in the book. It's like a full page of him leaning against a trap case. And then there was I remember from that show they used the centerfold of Eddie, David, and Michael, kind of playing around with Eddie's guitar. So that was a centerfold, and they did a spread, and the ball just started rolling. They started sending me on assignment. I started, finding bands that I wanted to shoot, and it just kind of, one door led to another.
Yeah, well, that's certainly the perfect opportunity to grow. Now, when did you start learning the game where, hey, I should be owning my own photos so you have, additional usage?
Right. Well, then a few years into it, I wanted to start branching out, and there was other magazines. There was Hit Parade or Cream, and then there's a magazine called Faces that I started with a friend of mine, Michael Kirk, which was more of a photo shoot thing. I didn't like the direction Circus was going because they were using just live shots with flash on the cover, and I wanted to go backstage and do pose photos and things like that. So I kind of swayed away from them a little bit. Down the road, like literally like in the 90s, Jerry Rothberg reached out to me, and he said, if you want your photos, because they were closing up shop, if you want your photos, come on in and you can pick them up. And he did. And a lot of the photos that are in my book are from that shoot, which so they kind of gave me the rights back to the pictures.
That's amazing. Again, we're talking about the decade that rocked. This is the man, Mark Weiss. It's over 400 pages, rave reviews from all the great artists. And I know you started, flying around. So much of that was on the East Coast where you're from, but now we're seeing you over here, the US Festival out here in Southern California, and shooting more and more of these West Coast bands like Van Halen and Dokken and all that. Um, what was it that really opened it up for you to be able to get hired and get flown around and take it to the level of the album cover shoots?
Well, Circus kind of gave me my platform, because everyone that was the #1 rock magazine for that genre of music. So and I was doing covers of the magazine with Ozzy and Richie Blackmore, and they were giving me the assignments to do them. So people knew my name, and then it just one thing led to another. They wanted the pictures in the magazine, and I started getting in other magazines, and they knew if they did a photo shoot with me that they would end up getting in all the magazines. So I would get hired by the publicist, I get hired by the management company. And so then I started becoming more of a freelance photographer and did a lot of spec shoots. So when there was a new band, they would I would get them in all the magazines. And then really the game changer was when Twisted Sister contacted me to do the Stay Hungry album. I've never done an album cover before, and I found out later on they thought I did, but I didn't. And Mark Mendoza told me the theme of the Stay Hungry album, and I had this built set. That was a built set in my studio in New York. They came in, we spent about 22 hours doing different sets, some with makeup, some without makeup. Uh, and once that came out, and once that got all the recognition, and they went platinum, and it was a game changer. Then people started calling me to do their album covers. I did a lot after that. I did Under Lock and Key and The Last Command by Wasp, The Man, Slippery When Wet, of course, Brittany Fox. So that's kind of it. It gets to be word of mouth.
Wow. So that first Twitz's Sister cover may not have even happened if they would have grilled you on like, well, let's see the covers you've done.
Yeah. The band, I guess the record company or someone, they just assumed that I, did album covers before. I don't know. Or they just saw my work. They said, the band wanted a rock photographer, not like a corporate guy that, that was kind of like, they wanted someone that will get along with them. And they thought I would get along with the band. And having that platform of Circus and all the rock magazines, that's a lot of times that was a good reason for them to get me the job.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I know a big game changer, obviously, in the industry is the technology, because you go back to, real film and negatives and processing and all that. At what point did digital come into the game, and how has that changed your business?
I don't even know when it came in, but after it was over, after the 80s were over and the 90s, and it really didn't matter at that point. But for me, I was working for a German magazine called Bravo, and I would shoot a lot of pop acts. And like when NSYNC first came out, I did a photo shoot with them, and Backstreet Boys, and Christina Aguilera, and Usher, and all these rap bands. And it was a weekly German magazine. It was huge, so I got a lot of access. That's kind of what I did for a good solid 10 years. So in that respect, the digital came in handy because I didn't have to send my photos to Germany, go through customs, and it was a weekly, so they needed them quick. So it was useful for me to learn that. I probably wouldn't have learned it so quick if I didn't have that Bravo magazine job. And then I just grew with it grew each year. The technology got better. And the megapixels and the JPEG sizes and to where it is today, where it's amazing, and you can tweak it and make it look like anything you want, really. And there's no expense to all the film like it used to be back in the day. And all the pressure of, is it going to come out, and going through x-ray machines. So it was a real hassle, let me tell you. So now it's pretty easy. I mean, the downfall is you take so many photos, and then you spend more time editing the photos than taking them.
Sure. Well,
Which is
I know being able to layer, in digital and manipulate them is a game changer. I heard your story about talking about like the Wasp Last Command album, and that's real. That's a set. That's Lackey standing in front of a backdrop. I mean, today you'd have the
right.
picture of the artist and a picture of a background. It's just layered in. I mean, it had to just open up so many other options for you.
Yeah, it's a lot easier. I mean, I like having, I feel like you can, being in it in the set, you see it and you feel it. Like the Motley Crue session I did for Theater of Pain, where they're dressed up like gangsters. I mean, that was a real Rolls Royce car. It was not a real backdrop. That was a painted backdrop. And then, of course, the smoke, and we wet down the street to make it look a little, slick and everything. So, but just being in that environment, and instead of just like through green screen or a white thing and layer it in, it makes the artist feel like they're more involved in it. So I'm a big believer in not doing so much on that end, and making it look real and feel real, and be able to sit on something and props, just anything to make them feel comfortable, and being in
Yeah.
that, on that set, they feel it, and they start feeling it, and then, as opposed to, like, not being there.
Yeah, it's kind of like the actors. A real set is a big difference between somebody standing in front of a green screen and being told what's actually around them. Talk about the book, the idea for the book. I mean, you've got tremendous response to it. We're in such a visual age, people are, nostalgic. Us that grew up in the 70s or 80s, reminisce, of how great the business and the time was. Tell us about the concept for the decade that rocked. The 80s being that decade, and the idea for the book, and what you feel, most proud of accomplishing with this.
uh it's like back in the day, I didn't have time to do a portfolio. um it was, so this is kind of like my portfolio, because I back then I was like hopping on different, this tour and that tour, and Rat and Ozzy and Motley and Ted Nugent, and I was just didn't have time. I was just working all the time, having fun. So it's kind of like, my portfolio finally, and it's the best of the best. And it took a lot of time. It took me 5 years to make and edit it and make it perfect. And the pictures that are in there are shoots that tell my story. And like, there's a lot of bands that were left out, or there were just a little small photo here and there. But eventually I'll do a book on each year, and then I can really include that, and then tell stories as well. But probably more of an on the road type thing, where there'll be more backstage photos and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Look, are you self-published, or do you go through a publisher to put this out?
No, Insight Publishing did it. They're a big they do a lot of the Harry Potter books, and a lot of like those kind of specialty books, really art, coffee table books. They did a handful of music books, not a lot. And Simon and Schuster is distributing it, and you can get it in Barnes and Noble, get it at Amazon. I sell them on my site with signed and personalized with postcards and different things. So that's out there.
Yeah, it was great to see, like people like Sebastian Bach unbox it and go through and see the extra prints that you've made, and all the extras. We encourage everybody that grew up in the 80s, or, younger, and reminisce. You're seeing these incredible bands from that era, and really want to take a beautiful trip down memory lane. The decade that rock.com is where you can get all the details in the book.